Hello and welcome to Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm giving an overview of my reviews of the three Dune films, the two Denis Villeneuve films from the past few years, and David Lynch's 1984 version. So let me start by saying that this kind of sci-fi just is not my thing. I've tried reading the book twice and both times I gave up on it. I just didn't get on with it. I do go and see all the blockbusters, so I turned up to see these Dune films with my fingers crossed. So let's start with Dune Part 1 from 2021. I do have mixed views on this. There were things about it that I did enjoy. It's an impressive cast and it's got really high production values, so it is an audio-visual experience. I really liked the character Duncan, played by Jason Momoa, but he's killed off early, so I didn't get to enjoy him for very long. The music is really good, except I did find it problematic. The kind of wailing women in the desert music, it was just too melodramatic. It actually reminded me of The Lion King, which was a kind of strange reference. Overall, the whole kind of world created by Villeneuve just reminds me of Star Wars, which really isn't my thing. The Force, the mass ranks of battalions on the planet with these massive spaceships, that kind of Star Wars world just isn't for me. In terms of any real substance, I can understand that this is about the politics of colonialism, but I don't think that those issues come across enough. We don't really feel any of the great injustice. It never really engaged me. I just don't really care about the characters. One of the biggest problems I had with the film was the reliance on CGI. This just detracts from the film's potential, I think. The audio-visual experience is supposed to be the strength of the film, and a lot of the time it just looked synthetic to me. Another thing I struggled with are the sandworms. They just seemed over the top. I just wasn't convinced by the sandworms at all. And the narrative pacing was just too slow. It really, to me, seemed to focus excessively on setting up the sequel, and that's never a good thing. My biggest gripe with the whole film was the final line, "This is only the beginning." I hate it so much when the first installment of a series of films doesn't properly conclude. Overall, I was really disappointed with this film. Given that it was really well received, before I went to see Dune 2, I gave Dune 1 a second viewing, and unfortunately I still felt the same. So let's move on to Dune 2, which came out this year, and we'll start with some of the positives. I really liked the glitchy voice at the beginning, and I forgot to mention this was also at the beginning of part 1 also. It's a great opening, but of course it only lasts a few seconds. Someone mentioned to me about the colour grading in these Villeneuve Dune films, and so watching Dune 2 I really looked at that. And I must say, it was really impressive. It looked amazing in the 70mm film version I saw, which I've just learned is apparently equivalent to like 12 to 18K. So it looked fantastic. I saw it on the big Dolby Vision screen in Leicester Square, as I did Dune 1 actually. It really was an audio-visual spectacle. There was a scene at the start where everything is orange, but there are so many tones of orange, and we hear the subtle sound of sand as they shuffle around in it. It felt very tactile. This was really impressive, I thought. I was more engaged than at any point in the first film. I'm not sure, however, that there was another moment quite like that in the movie, sadly. Even though visually it is stunning and there are so many great shots, so much of it is computer generated, and I just can't help feeling it's devalued by the fact that it's synthetic. This is just a personal taste thing. I know plenty of people don't have a problem with this, but I do. I did think the black and white scene in the arena, the fight scene, looked fantastic, though of course it is all CG. So let's move on to the things I didn't like about Dune 2. Now, I know that fans would say it's exactly what's in the book, but I think that riding the worms is really stupid. It seems out of keeping with the overall tone of the film. I don't think any of the worm scenes are amazing, but their riding on the backs just seemed ridiculous to me. Another problem is that the film just has too many stars. It's showy and unnecessary. It becomes distracting and it only serves to illustrate that the film must have had a stupid budget. A related point here is that Florence Pugh is a great actress, but as in Oppenheimer, she was grossly underused in this. That said, the Christopher Walken cameo did work, I thought. I liked this. And again, my biggest gripe with this film is that we had a cheap setup line for the third film in the franchise. The last line is "The Holy War begins." I think this is cheap and lazy to not give the film a proper ending. I think even in a trilogy, each film should stand in its own right. Surely this isn't a difficult thing to do. My final criticism is that it's definitely too long. It felt never ending. So finally, let's turn to David Lynch's 1984 Dune. Now, I'm a big David Lynch fan, so this has always been on my list, but I've just never got round to seeing it. Apparently, Lynch has disowned this film because he didn't have enough control over the final edit. I'd really like to see his original version, but I was still looking forward to seeing this. Of course, it's a lot older, this film, so it doesn't use CGI. We've got puppets and costumes. It's simpler and, in my view, much more effective. The environments are really imaginative and they capture a unique, almost dreamlike quality. It's definitely Lynchian in its weirdness with the portrayal of the Hakkinen. I really wonder what the David Lynch version of this film would have been if it hadn't have been, if he'd have had control over the final version, because I think the Lynchian weirdness turned up a bit would have made this film even better. For me, the whole film kind of evoked a kind of innocence reminiscent of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And after the kind of synthetic feel of Villeneuve's Dune 1 and 2, I actually quite enjoyed this. The visual palette, as in the later Dune films, is dominated by these beautiful orange skies and the vast sand dunes. It does offer a distinctive aesthetic. It's interesting that both films do use this similar aesthetic. The duration is only 1 hour and 40 minutes, and this actually includes scenes not found in the Villeneuve versions. So it's interesting what can be done in one film rather than two. As an example, Lynch's Dune shows us an intriguing method of how they actually mount the sandworms. Of course, earlier I made the point that I think the sandworms are silly, but if you're going to have them actually showing how they mount them, I thought this was not uninteresting. I did feel like it gave more detail and it takes the story further than Dune Part 2. And this was all in 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I think I enjoyed it a bit more. After the mammoth CGI extravaganzas of Villeneuve's Dune 1 and 2, Lynch's Dune felt like it had a certain charm in its weirdness and simplicity. The truth is, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much if I hadn't just seen Dune 1 and 2. It's more enjoyable when compared to the Villeneuve films. You know what? I'm glad to have ticked it off my David Lynch list. But overall, none of these three films really excited me. In Lynch's version, I liked the more traditional filmmaking and the kind of unique artistic vision. And in Villeneuve's two films, despite their visual and technical wow factor, I struggled with the narrative and emotional depth, and they left me feeling somewhat detached from the supposed larger philosophical and cultural critiques. None of them are anywhere near my favourite films. I'm not sure whether I can muster up the enthusiasm for a Dune 3. If I watch it in Leicester Square on the big screen in 70mm again, I probably would do it. But I can't really recommend any of these films. That's just my opinion. But several people, especially the people who love the books, absolutely loved it. So if you like this kind of thing or you love the books, then this is definitely for you. It's not for me, unfortunately. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.